The phone buzzed at 2 a.m. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to cut through the dark. I was already halfway awake when my hand reached out. And in that moment, before I even unlocked the screen, something deep in my chest whispered, "If you see this, your life will never feel the same again." If you've ever trusted someone completely, if you've ever believed your family was untouchable, and if you've ever had that illusion ripped away in a single moment, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens after you find out, "I never thought I'd be writing something like this." People always say, "You never really know someone." I used to roll my eyes at that, because I thought I did. I thought family was the one thing you could rely on. Turns out that belief was fragile, and it shattered in the glow of a phone screen. It started with something stupid. My mom had left her phone on the kitchen counter. Face down, silent mode on, she does that a lot. I wasn't snooping, I wasn't suspicious, I wasn't looking for anything, I was just grabbing water, then it buzzed. Once, twice, 2, 3 a.m. That's the kind of time where your brain pauses and asks, "Who texts a married woman at 2 a.m.? I told myself not to look. I actually whispered it under my breath. Don't. But my hands moved anyway. I still don't know why. Curiosity, instinct. A quiet fear I didn't know I'd been carrying. The lock screen lit up. One notification. A name I didn't recognize, and a message that made my stomach drop before I even unlocked it. "I can still smell you on me." My breath caught. That sharp, cold sensation spread through my chest, the kind you feel right before bad news lands. I unlocked the phone, and I kept scrolling. Every swipe felt heavier than the last. These weren't jokes. These weren't misunderstandings. These weren't work texts taken out of context. They were intimate, detailed, comfortable. The kind of conversations that only happen when two people have been crossing a line for a long time. Hotel dates, dinner reservations. Voice notes sent when she thought no one was around, inside jokes, heart emojis, plans, a whole secret life. My vision blurred, not from tears yet, but from the way my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. This was my mom, the same woman who tucked me in at night, who lectured me about loyalty, who warned me that cheating destroys families. And here she was, lying to my dad every single day. I wanted to stop reading. I didn't. Because once you see the truth, your brain doesn't let you look away. I felt sick, like my body knew before my mind caught up. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinet, phone glowing in my lap like a crime scene. I remember thinking, "This can't be real." Then I remembered the late nights, the sudden work dinners, the way she'd angle her phone away when texting, all the signs I'd ignored because you don't suspect your own mother. I felt stupid, complicit, like I'd failed my dad without even knowing it. The worst part? My dad, he's 55, soft-spoken, the kind of man who remembers birthdays without reminders. He brings home snacks he knows we like, checks the locks before bed, trusts people without suspicion because he assumes everyone has a conscience. Watching him smile at her, the same smile he's had for years, now feels unbearable. Every time he laughs at her jokes, my chest tightens. Every time she kisses him goodbye, my jaw clenches so hard it hurts. Dinner feels like a performance now. Laughter feels scripted. Hugs feel wrong, like watching actors who don't know the audience has already seen behind the curtain. And I'm sitting there, fork in hand, stomach twisted into knots, carrying a secret that doesn't belong to me. I thought about telling him. God, I thought about it constantly. Every time he did something small and thoughtful, refilling her water glass, asking about her day, trusting her completely. It hurt more because he had no idea who he was being compared to behind his back. Her boss, that's who it was. She's 46, he's dominant, flashy, the opposite of my dad in every way, and I hate that my brain started making those comparisons without my permission. My dad is steady, loyal, kind, and apparently that wasn't enough. I couldn't stop wondering when she decided risking everything was worth it. I stopped sleeping. When I closed my eyes, the messages replayed like a loop I couldn't shut off. Food tasted wrong. My stomach hurt all the time. I'd lie in bed listening to the house settle at night, wondering how long this had been going on while I lived under the same roof, believing we were a normal family. I hated her. I hated him for being blind. And I hated myself for noticing the signs too late. Or worse, noticing them and choosing not to look closer. I'm 21. I thought this phase of my life would be about figuring myself out, not silently surviving inside a house built on lies. The hypocrisy was unbearable. Listening to her talk about respect, about loyalty, about family values. I'd nod along, nails digging into my palm, forcing my face to stay neutral while everything inside me burned. I felt embarrassed, disgusted, angry, like I was carrying a live wire in my chest and no safe place to put it down. I loved them both. And loving them while knowing this truth felt like betrayal in every direction. I told myself I'd delete the screenshots, that I wouldn't be that person, that destroying my dad would help no one, so I erased them from my phone, watched the screen clear, told myself it was over. That sometimes peace is better than being right. But the truth, I kept copies, private files, hidden because part of me knew. This wasn't done with me yet. Something had shifted. Something dark and heavy had settled in my chest. And as I watched my mom move through the house like nothing had changed, I realized I wasn't just holding a secret anymore. I was holding power, and I hadn't decided what to do with it. The thing no one tells you about holding a secret like that, it doesn't stay quiet. It doesn't sit politely in the corner of your mind waiting to be addressed. It rotted, slowly, relentlessly. Every single day after that night felt heavier than the last. I started noticing everything, not in a paranoid way, in a pattern recognition way. Once your brain has the truth, it starts connecting dots you didn't even know existed. Her phone never left her side anymore. Bathroom trips got longer. Her voice softened when she stepped outside to take a call. And then there was how she treated my dad. Subtle things, weaponized patience, dismissive sighs. That tone people use when they think they're smarter than you. She'd interrupt him mid-sentence, correct him over stupid things, roll her eyes when he explained himself, and he'd just take it, smile, back down, apologize even when he hadn't done anything wrong. I'd sit there watching it happen, jaw tight, pulse pounding in my ears, thinking, if you only knew. She started acting untouchable, confident in a way that felt new, sharper, almost smug, like someone who believed they were untouchable because no one would ever dare call them out. And that confidence bled into everything. She barked orders, criticized how my dad folded laundry, mocked his opinions in front of me, and the worst part, she still talked about loyalty, still gave lectures, still looked me dead in the eye and said things like, "Trust is everything in a marriage." My nails would dig into my thigh under the table. I learned how to smile without my eyes. I wanted to scream, instead I watched. And the more I watched, the angrier I became, not explosive anger, the quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and calcifies into something cold and deliberate. One night, I overheard her on the phone. She thought everyone was asleep. Her bedroom door was cracked just enough for her voice to slip through the hallway. Soft, playful, intimate, a voice she never used with my dad anymore. I stood there in the dark, barefoot on cold tile, heart hammering, listening to her laugh quietly at something he said. And then she whispered, "I miss you too." Something snapped inside me, not loudly, but cleanly, like a switch flipping. I went back to my room and sat on my bed, staring at the wall. That was the moment I stopped seeing her as just my mother. I saw her as someone abusing the power she had, using my dad's trust like a shield, using our family like camouflage. And I realized something that made my stomach twist with a strange mix of fear and clarity. She didn't feel guilty. If she did, she wouldn't be so comfortable. She wouldn't sleep so peacefully. She wouldn't keep going. The DMs started pouring in after I posted anonymously online. People angry on my behalf. People shocked. People telling me to burn it all down. At first, I ignored them. Then I started reading, really reading, and one message stopped me cold. It was short, blunt. "Why would you tell your dad and lose all your leverage?" I reread it 3 times. Leverage. That word sat heavy. Another message followed. "She's living off him while disrespecting him. Why blow it up when you can control it?" Control, that word made my skin prickle. It felt wrong. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more it clicked into place. Why should my dad be destroyed? Why should he suffer when he was the only innocent one in this entire mess? If I told him now, he'd crumble. His whole world would shatter. And for what? So she could play victim? So she could cry and apologize and blame a mistake? No, that didn't feel like justice. That felt like chaos. And then another message landed. This one changed everything. Become the boss of her. She thinks she runs the family. Remind her she's nothing without him. My throat went dry, because once the idea existed, I couldn't unthink it. She walked around like she was untouchable. But she had everything to lose. And I had everything she feared. I started watching her differently after that, not as a child, as an observer. She was careless, arrogant. She assumed no one would ever challenge her, that her authority in the house was absolute. She spoke to me like I was still a kid, like I didn't understand adult relationships, like I was beneath her. If only she knew. One afternoon, she snapped at my dad over something stupid. He'd forgotten to pick up the exact brand of yogurt she liked. She sighed loudly, rolled her eyes, said, "I literally told you this yesterday." He apologized, again. I felt something cold spread through my chest. I realized then, she didn't just betray him, she disrespected him, and that made everything else unforgivable. That night, I went back into my private files, opened the screenshots, scrolled slowly, methodically. I wasn't shaking anymore. My breathing was steady, my thoughts were clear. I backed everything up, multiple places, because if I was going to hold power, I was going to hold it properly. I rehearsed the confrontation in my head 100 times, different tones, different words. Yelling felt pointless. Crying felt weak. I needed calm, I needed control. I needed to let her understand exactly how fragile her position was. The house felt different after that, like I'd stepped into a new role without anyone else realizing it yet. Every time she spoke sharply, I watched. Every time she glanced at her phone, I noted it. Every time my dad smiled at her, my resolve hardened. I wasn't doing this for revenge, that's what I told myself. I was doing it to protect him, to preserve his happiness. And if that meant she had to feel fear for the first time, so be it. I waited for the right moment, for a day when my dad would be gone long enough, when there would be no interruptions, no witnesses, just the truth, and the consequences. When that day finally came, I didn't feel nervous, I felt calm, cold, prepared. And as I watched my dad grab his keys and head out the door, the morning it happened, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was anxious, not because I was scared, because my body already knew. There was a stillness in the house that felt different, heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall, the tick of the clock in the living room. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. That was what terrified me most. I felt calm. Too calm. My dad left around 10. He kissed my mom on the cheek like he always did. Soft, familiar, trusting. "Back in a couple hours," he said, grabbing his keys. She smiled. Bright, effortless. The same smile I'd watched her use on 2 men without flinching. "Drive safe," she replied. The door closed. And just like that, the house shifted. The sound of his car pulling away down the street felt like a countdown hitting 0. My mom went back to scrolling on her phone, already half absorbed in whatever world existed behind that screen. She didn't even look at me. That was fine. I didn't need eye contact yet. I stood there for a second, grounding myself. I could feel my pulse in my throat, slow and deliberate. My palms were dry, my breathing steady. This wasn't anger. This was resolve. I walked into the kitchen and picked up her phone from the counter. Casually, like it meant nothing. She noticed immediately, her head snapped up. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp, defensive. I met her eyes, really met them. And for the first time since I'd discovered everything, I didn't look away. "We need to talk," I said. Something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not fear, annoyance. "About what?" she scoffed. "Give me my phone." I didn't. I turned the screen toward her instead. Unlocked, scrolled, stopped, held it there. The color drained from her face so fast it was almost impressive. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. For a split second she looked small, human, then instinct kicked in. "Why were you on my phone?" she snapped, trying to regain control. "That's private." I tilted my head slightly. "You want to talk about privacy?" I asked quietly. Her lips trembled, just barely. She tried to speak, tried to laugh it off, tried to explain. "It's not what you think," she started, reaching for the phone. I stepped back. "Don't," I said, one word, flat. She froze. I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't insulted her, hadn't accused her out loud, but something in my tone made her stop. I kept going. "You're going to block him," I said, "right now." Her eyes widened. "You don't get to." You're going to block him, I repeated, firmer this time. Delete the thread, remove him from every app, contacts, everything. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Are you threatening me? She asked, her voice shaking now. I leaned forward just enough to make sure she understood. I'm protecting Dad, I said. You're the one who put me in this position. Silence, thick, suffocating. She sank into a chair like her legs had given out. Her hands were trembling. I noticed that, filed it away. The woman who used to bark orders, who corrected everyone, who ran the house like a CEO, was shaking. I'll tell him, she whispered. I'll come clean. I shook my head slowly. No, I said, you won't. Her eyes snapped up. Why? She demanded, desperation creeping in. Because that was the point, wasn't it? She still didn't understand. Because telling him would destroy him, I said. And you don't get to hurt him just to clear your conscience. She swallowed hard. And if you don't do exactly what I'm asking? She said. I held up the phone. You know exactly what happens. For a moment I thought she might scream, might lash out, might try to flip the script and play the mother card. Instead, she nodded once slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. Her voice broke on the second word. I stood over her while she unlocked the phone again, watched her fingers fumble, watched her open Instagram, then messages, then contacts. Every movement felt like a small surrender. Block, I said. She pressed it. Delete the thread. She hesitated. I didn't say anything, just waited. She deleted it, watched the messages vanish. Her shoulders slumped. Now everything else, I said. She did it, all of it. When she finished, she handed the phone back to me with both hands. Like an offering, I stared at the screen for a long moment, then locked it, handed it back. If I ever see his name again, I said, my voice low, controlled, it's over. She nodded again, faster this time. I promise, she said, I swear. Her eyes were wet now, but I didn't feel bad. I felt steady, balanced, like something inside me had finally stopped screaming. She went to her room after that, said she needed to lie down. Napping, she called it. I heard the door close. Then nothing, no movement, no sound. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the same spot on the wall for a long time, processing, letting it settle. I realized something then that made my stomach flip. Not with guilt, with clarity. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't crying, I wasn't questioning myself. I felt powerful, not in a cruel way, in a contained way. Like I'd taken control of a situation that was poisoning me from the inside out. Dad was safe. She was checked, and I held the truth. When my dad came home later, everything looked the same. She smiled at him. He smiled back. They talked about errands, dinner plans, normal things, and for the first time in weeks I could breathe. Because I knew something they didn't. The balance of this house had shifted. The strangest part wasn't the guilt. It was how quickly normal came back. The next morning, my mom moved through the house like nothing had happened. Coffee brewed, dishes clinked. The same routine she'd followed for years. Except now, she avoided my eyes. Not obviously. Not enough for my dad to notice. But I did. Every time I entered a room, her shoulders tensed. Every time her phone buzzed, she flinched before checking it. Fear had replaced arrogance. And fear is leverage. I didn't say anything for days. That was intentional. Silence is terrifying when you don't know what the other person is thinking. I watched her carefully. How she overexplained harmless things. How she volunteered information no one asked for. How she hovered around my dad, overly affectionate, like she was trying to compensate for something she couldn't undo. The power shift wasn't loud. It was subtle, and it was working. One evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. Dad was in the living room, watching TV. Her voice was low, controlled. What do you want? She asked. Not why are you doing this, not how could you, what do you want? I turned to face her slowly. And for the first time, I let myself really look at her, not as my mother, as a woman who had gambled everything and lost. I want you to remember, I said, that this family survives because Dad believes in it. She swallowed. And I want you to stop acting like you're in charge, I continued. Because you're not. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Yes, she said, that word, so quiet, so final. From that point on, the house ran differently. She stopped snapping at my dad, stopped correcting him, stopped rolling her eyes. If he asked for something, she did it. If I spoke, she listened. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cruel. It was psychological. She knew she was being watched. And I made sure she stayed aware of that. I started setting boundaries. Small ones, precise ones. Don't speak to him like that. She'd stop immediately. Where are you going? She'd answer, not because I demanded it, but because she was terrified of what would happen if she didn't. And the thing that surprised me, she didn't fight it, because deep down, she knew she deserved this. At night, I heard her crying, muffled, pillow pressed over her face. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not cruelty, just distance. She'd chosen this reality long before I stepped into it. I was just enforcing consequences. A week later, I did something I hadn't planned on doing at first. Something that cemented everything. I found his wife, her boss's wife. It took less effort than I expected. Social media makes people careless. She was exactly what I imagined. Polished. Smiling. Pictures of family vacations and anniversary dinners. A woman who thought her life was secure. I stared at her profile for a long time, then I closed the app. I didn't message her, not yet, but my mom didn't know that. And that mattered. That evening, I mentioned it casually, over dinner. By the way, I said, stabbing a piece of chicken with my fork, I found his wife online. My mom froze mid-bite, her face went pale, Dad didn't notice. Found who? He asked. No one, my mom said quickly, too quickly. Work thing. I smiled slightly and dropped it. I didn't need to say more, the message had landed. Later that night, she knocked on my door, soft, hesitant. Can we talk? She asked. I let the silence stretch before answering. Yes, I said. She stepped inside, wringing her hands like a nervous teenager. Please, she whispered, don't do this. Her voice cracked. I already did, I replied calmly. You just didn't know it yet. Tears streamed down her face. I blocked him, she said desperately. I did everything you asked. I know, I said. This isn't about punishment, this is about understanding. Her shoulders sagged. Understanding what? That you don't get to risk Dad's happiness ever again, I said. Not for attention, not for excitement, not for anyone. She nodded frantically. I won't, she sobbed, I swear. I believed her, but belief wasn't the point. Fear was. After that, she became obedient. That's the only word for it. She checked in with me before making decisions, asked my opinion, deferred. She built her authority on control. And now control belonged to me, quietly, absolutely. Weeks passed. The affair was dead. No messages, no secret calls, no late-night disappearances. Dad remained blissfully unaware, happy, whole, and that was the part that mattered. But something inside me kept pushing, not for more punishment, for closure, because while I had control, she hadn't truly faced what she'd done. Not yet. The opportunity came when she tried to step out of line, just once. She made a comment, dismissive, small, about my dad being too sensitive. I looked at her, didn't raise my voice, didn't react emotionally. I simply said, "Do you want him to know?" Her face crumpled instantly. "No," she whispered. "Then don't forget your place," I replied. Silence. After that, she never tested me again. The thing about holding power for too long is that it starts to ask questions, not loud ones. Quiet ones. What are you going to do with me? How does this end? I felt it every time I looked at my mom and saw fear instead of arrogance. Every time my dad laughed, unaware of how close his life had come to detonating. I hadn't done this to become cruel. I hadn't done it to feel superior. I'd done it to stop the bleeding. But wounds don't heal if they're just covered. They need to be closed. The final move wasn't dramatic. No screaming. No confrontation in the living room. No exposure. It was surgical. One evening, when my dad was already asleep, I knocked on her bedroom door. She opened it immediately. She always did now. "Yes," she asked quietly. Her eyes flicked to my hands. Empty. That alone seemed to confuse her. "Sit," I said. She did, on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap, waiting. "I'm done," I said, her head snapped up. "Done?" she repeated, panic rising instantly. "With this," I clarified, "with watching you, managing you, holding this over your head." She started to cry. "I'll do anything," she whispered. "Please." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not satisfaction, relief. "I don't want anything anymore," I said. "That's the point." She looked at me like she didn't understand, so I continued. "You're going to live with this," I said calmly. "Every day, knowing how close you came to losing everything. Knowing that I saw you for who you really are." Her breathing turned shallow. "And you're never going to forget," I added, "that the only reason Dad is still happy is because I chose mercy." That did it, she broke, not dramatically. Quietly, shoulders shaking, face in her hands, a woman collapsing under the weight of her own choices. I didn't comfort her. I didn't need to. "I'm not going to tell him," I said, "as long as you never give me a reason to." She nodded violently. "I won't," she said, "I swear." "I believe you," I replied, and for the first time since this began. I meant it. The next morning felt different, lighter. The house didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt settled. My mom moved carefully but not fearfully, respectfully. My dad was the same, kind, oblivious, happy. And that was the greatest victory of all. He never lost his world. She lost her illusion. And I lost the anger that had been poisoning me. Weeks passed, then months. The affair stayed dead. She never stepped out of line again, not once. I watched her change, not into a better person necessarily, but into a more honest one. Humbled, aware, accountable, and me, I stopped replaying the messages at night. Stopped carrying that tightness in my chest. Stopped feeling like I was drowning in a secret. One night, I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because I'd become someone dark, but because I'd become someone strong. Someone who learned, far too early, that love without boundaries rots. That loyalty without accountability is just blindness, and that justice doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes, it looks like restraint. I don't regret what I did. Not for a second. I protected my father. I forced my mother to face herself, and I reclaimed my own sense of power in a situation where I'd had none. Love, trust, family. They'll never look the same to me again, but maybe that's not a loss. Maybe that's clarity. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It isn't public. It doesn't leave bodies in its wake. Sometimes the most satisfying justice is knowing you could have destroyed someone and choosing not to. If this story hit you in the chest, if it made you uncomfortable, angry, or weirdly satisfied, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more unforgettable revenge stories, because not all power is taken. Some of it is earned. And once you have it, you never forget what it feels like.